All right, beautiful humans. Welcome back to another episode of Naked Sunday. And I am your host, Caleb Nelson. I have the lovely Tasca Tolson on the episode today. Welcome to the show. On.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for being a guest today. And this is a little something I like to do start every episode.
Okay.
I like to share my one thing or something that I appreciate my guest for. And
Okay.
namely because I think in this world, we don't spend enough time telling each other how much we appreciate each other or how much we love each other.
Most
And
definitely.
based off some of the things you've already shared with me about yourself, just the 5 minutes we chatted beforehand, I see how this kind of vibe would go well with some of those initiatives you got going. So
Okay.
just even in these 5 minutes, you just have this very like beautiful, nurturing, loving, and really impassioned like persona and energy about you. And you talk about energy a little bit, about picking up on a vibe and all that. Your passion for what you do, I love that. I don't understand how people just go through life bored. Like, I don't get that. And people who don't pursue works that really inspire them, but especially with where you're going with your work. And I'm excited to dive into it a little bit today. Like, you're so inspired to help people and help people like become a better version of themselves, whether it's in their
Most definitely.
relationships or overcoming these past traumas that you're going to get to, like deep, heavy work. And it's not a small burden to carry, especially when you put yourself in some challenging conversations. You hear some hard things. And it's my hope that we have more people like you kind of step up in the world like you are, and just being able to share that kind of love. So
Well,
for that, I want to
thank
let you
you.
know that got
You
my
you only
heart
had
all
me
warmed up.
start blushing before we even really get started. It's not work if you love it, right? And so I am one of the few people, or I won't say few people. I'm fortunate enough to be able to love the work that I do, and it feels like it's meaningful. And to have people come back and say you help is priceless.
We can't take the money to the grave, right? So, I mean, it's nice to make the money, but being inspired and loving what you do, you're right. It is truly priceless. So, leading into my first question of the day, like, you know yourself better than I do. So,
Yes.
Tosca, who are you?
Okay. Who am I? That is such a profound question. And I often tell my clients that they are the only person that can fill in the blank behind the I am.
Mm,
And so I am a therapist, mother, activist, purposeful leader in my community. And I just want to leave behind a path of healing and I don't even know the word to put in there. I just want people to be able to heal and live their best lives.
I mean, I can always get on board with people just want to live their best life. That's the way I would hope it should be. I don't like to use the word should too often because it gets a little dogmatic, but
Yes.
I love that you appreciated that question, because I ask it namely because everybody gives me a unique like, let me really think about that, because most people just roll with like, well, this is what I do and this and we're so stuck on these labels, and we
Hmm.
kind of leaned into a little bit of trauma discussion around that. I got to imagine a lot of those things of like, I label myself a victim and I stay with that identity and stick with that. But share a little bit about what you do. I mean, you were quite prolific, as you shared with me beforehand, in the work you do and the realms you tap into. Take us on a journey.
All right. So I am a mental health professional who has experience in substance abuse, grief, trauma. I also have some experience in coaching. I also tend to just fill in the blanks where needed within my community. I like to fill in gaps where needed. So sometimes I take calls. I've taken some calls from people who have been involved in shootings, or somebody might give me a call if they are struggling within a home and want to make better choices. And so I'm overall, I'm just a community support. That's what I want to be. This is where I'm going to be at. And so I want to be used as a tool. And so my prayer has been to just be used as a tool, because I think that when you give back, that the universe will naturally give back to you. And that's not in dollar amounts. And I think we were talking before about intrinsic wealth and financial wealth. I just want to be intrinsically wealthy beyond limits.
Well, that's an interesting one to bring up because I think a lot of people struggle with the notion of what wealth is.
Hmm.
Can you define a little bit, like for somebody who's, well, I think a lot of people grapple with what it means to feel in the idea, especially as you're going to tap into a little more now, like what is intrinsic wealth? Feeling, I hear fulfillment,
Hmm.
feeling inspired, like that's me, but like, how do you address that with people? Like, what do you bring up when you start hearing that kind of stuff or start navigating that topic?
So when people say they want to be wealthy, and I ask what's connected to the wealth that they want, right? So they want the ability to be able to pay bills, to be able to provide for their family, to be able to take trips. However, does that come as at a cost, right? Because I can have a job that pays me $100,000 a year. However, if I'm just paying the bills and I really don't have time to take a trip with my family, or when I'm on that trip with that family, I'm working, I'm really not intrinsically wealthy. So that wealth isn't that joy, that peace, that happiness isn't coming from within. We know that if I am not in a good mental health, or if I don't have good mental health, then I'm not in a good space and I'm working off of stress, distress, not stress, good stress, bad stress, that I literally begin to kill myself from the inside out, right? So when I had those high levels of cortisol that's constantly running through my body because I haven't found a way to deal with my daily stressors, my organs are going to be smaller. They're going to be more firm. They're not going to be as pliable, right? So when you have all the money in the world, if I don't have health, right, and I'm sick, does it really make a difference, right? I can go to the doctor and I can pay for it, but if I'm bedridden, I'm not really happy 9 times out of 10, right? And so that intrinsic wealth is the ability to still do those things for my family and be present, right? And so you start talking about things like mindfulness, right? A lot of people eat and we're never tasting our food.
Hmm. Yeah, I hear you there. I used to just shovel food in my face. Now, like to savor each bite. It's like, why are we just, when I hear people say, I'm just trying to get through it.
Mhm.
And I hear that, I'm like, you're just trying to get through your life. What? It doesn't make sense to me. Like, even I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, but like for me, I've come to a place now where I've even started to appreciate the dark times. And I
Mhm.
even look back on the dark times with gratitude and appreciation. I don't see it through the same lens
Mhm.
because again, it's just part of my human experience. Somebody, I guess, coming through a traumatic state probably is going to see that slightly differently because of what you're talking about, like the lack of the physical and mental connection with the
Mhm.
health as well, that whole bit. I don't even know where my thoughts were going with it, but I'd just be curious to hear your thoughts on anything that just like came out of my face there because I forget where my point was going with it. But I
Well,
see I stumble on my words sometimes too.
so when you go back and you're saying like, hey, how do I get past like the trauma and I've been a victim? That kind of goes back to the I am. Am I going to define myself as a victim or am I going to define myself as a survivor? Right? Life is all about experiences and it's cliche-ish, but it's not what happens to me, it's how I choose to respond to what happens to me, even in the worst of times. And so we have to have all the experiences, good, bad, or indifferent, right? That's the only way we appreciate the good. Because if all we know is bad, then that's it. If all we know is good, we really can't appreciate the things that we went through to make us who we are. So, like in both of our situations, it sounds like it wasn't very easy in the beginning. However, those experiences shaped us to be able to be more empathetic, have the ability to be able to hear, because a lot of people are not heard in life, right? So, again, thank you for what you do because the ability just to stop, pause, and listen without response, without having the comparable situation, a lot of people never get, hey, thank you for doing what you're doing. You're doing a good job with all the things considered that you've had happen to you. Yeah, you had a bad moment, even with the people I work with. Yeah, you had a bad moment. However, if you have the ability to recognize that and be different, what are you teaching other people about making different choices and your ability to be the person that you want to be?
It just gets me all warm on the inside too. There's one thing you brought up, switching the I am statement from I am a victim to I am a survivor. I have this one curiosity about it. And this is probably from my own personal experience. This is why I'm bringing it up.
Mhm.
Or often I was looking to replace one label I had on myself with a new one, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
it just was a thing and that happened and here I am now. What, obviously I understand like the path, like Survivor has a far more empowered space, but does it go all the way to where it needs to be, where we can just see it as a single moment in time? I'd be curious to hear what the path happens with that.
There's no single path,
Mhm.
right? One of my favorite questions is there one way is there one thing you can only do one thing?
Mhm.
I have not had anybody give me an answer to that and yes, right? There's nothing that can be done only one way. And again, it's not about every path is individualized, right? Because I might need to hit a couple of potholes. Somebody else might need to drive off the cliff before they get it. And so that lens that you're going through is going to be based off of that individual experience. Some people may need to get to the point that says, I'm not a victim, I'm not a survivor. It was just a thing that happened,
Mhm.
right? Um, However, there is more power in you being able to choose what you answer to.
Mm. So it's really more about owning the decision.
Owning your ability to be free.
Mm. Yeah, because that sounds like the undercurrent beneath the both all those labels or whatever you're gonna, it's the I am statement. Whatever
Mhm,
comes out of your mouth there is, well, I own the ability to make that decision to come forward.
mhm.
Well, I'm gonna chew on that one for a few days. Actually, that one's got some weight. I always try to
I
come up
tend
with a,
to have that effect on people sometimes.
that was a really good one. I always try to come up with a catchy title for all of these. So I got a few things that just simmered around there. Was pretty good in
Okay.
that. But what even attracted you like to this path? Like what got tell us where this started. What inspired you to even just go down this journey?
That is a big question. And I think this is just, if we're looking at a path and a road, this has been a trip across the globe, um, because a lot of the things that I'm able to share now, I had to learn and be able to put in practice myself.
Hmm.
Um, Being a woman of color um, in the middle of Missouri doesn't necessarily lend itself sometimes to the best experiences.
Hmm.
I was also an Army kid, so I went to 5 different elementary schools. So some of the things like lifelong friends, I don't have a best friend from kindergarten or preschool. So having to be independent in a source and stand firm. I recognized injustice at a very early age in life. Like I used to teach in the special needs room on my when I was in elementary. I've always been a helper, right? Um, and so when I look at my first license as being a cosmetologist, what closer relationship do you have with anybody outside of like friends and families than when you're cosmetologist, right? You're sitting
Hmm.
there and you talk about things, especially the work I did. I did braids and locks and things of that sort. So you're there for hours,
Hmm.
right? And so what I've learned throughout my path is that everybody wants to be happy. Nobody, a lot of people have a difficult time defining happiness and then figuring out a road how to get to that happiness. So it's kind of like I had a client tell me the other day, well, I want to be a millionaire. Okay, that's absolutely possible. Well, what kind of things do you need to do to be a millionaire? Well, it's all up in here, right? So everybody wants to be happy, but it's all up in here. What do I do to be happy? So we have to break it down even smaller. What 3 things can you do or are you willing to do, right? Because I can give lots of ideas. I'm a resource queen. That's what I dub myself. I'm kind of corny. I'm a resource queen. So I have lots of ideas. I can look up lots of things. However, what things are you willing to do to achieve those goals? And so for me, just being able to, I'm a problem solver, um, translate those skills. Even though I went about it the long way, that's what brought me to where I'm at. And I realized I guess the biggest thing that came to me one day is I was talking to somebody at the school and I was alumni and she was asking me what I do. And of course, like I said, it's no simple answer. And I came to the conclusion that I'm the person that I needed when I was young and there was nobody to support me. And that's why I do what I do.
Wow. Hindsight 2020, what were you looking for when you like, what did you need? What was that person you needed? And then how are you that now?
I needed somebody to be able to say, it's okay. I needed somebody to be able to say that everybody's paths look different. I needed somebody to say that you might fall down a few times, but you're really going to be okay at the end. And I just needed somebody to accept me just for me without asking me to make any changes in who I am. See, we can't get away from that I am. It's almost impossible.
Oh, I don't think it is possible. Nor do I even think it's worth trying to avoid.
Yeah.
Because I think the more, I'll share this story with you. It was sixth grade the first time I was ever confronted with that. It was my teacher. He was he might have been my social studies teacher or my English. Doesn't really matter. His name was Mr. Bagnuolo. I remember he just leans up on his desk. I can't remember what he said before, but after he just crossed arm and was like, so who are you? And that's been like an atomic bomb in the center of my brain. What am I, 30, almost 35 now? So that's a little over 20 years like we're talking about right now. So like it's such a profound question to ask because it is really like, and when I start to think about I am the culmination of all my experiences and my perspectives and my interpretations of those things, and then how I choose to project that forward. It's a really weighted, heavy, powerful question, and it can change. I think that's the other part to it where I think the reason why we jump to titles or labels, I'm a teacher, I'm a entrepreneur, and that's, the whatever, I'm a coach, I'm a that, is because it's easy and it's solid and we can put it into a box and we can understand it based off of the broad societal spectrum. But but like once we realize like, wait, we're so much more. Like when you talked about just to start off, I do mental health counseling. It's all these things that we do. And how do we put it into that nice little perfectly woven, there's no small answer to it, but it's just like, I am me, like whatever that means, so it's
the one definite is that no one else can answer to for you. I think I found the one thing you can only do one way is I am the only person that can ever say, I am Tosca. You are the only person that can say, I am Caleb. And everything else is encompassed within that.
You're just spitting fire to start this thing off. I'm really enjoying your conversation. You got me a couple of times here. My wife knows that I'm never usually short of words, but you got me pretty good right now. You really have, like, I love that you strike me as somebody who's just such a big community builder. And I would, now hearing some of your story from like jumping from different places, it's no wonder how you've learned how to pull people together, especially since you've been playing a lot of helper role in a lot of these places. Now, what I'm really curious about, and of course I still want to hear more about like how you've dealt with the grief and the overdose people and all the relationship stuff, all that's really cool. But I see like the culmination of what you're talking about, bringing your community together, because I think we need to all learn how to just have a conversation at the end of the day. Like this is not that hard. You and I are just talking, like we met over the internet, like
literally.
I like to think we're having
my first internet date.
Hey girl. Hi, I'm Caleb. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
What's the 3 bullet points I must know? I never really got into online dating, thank God, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. You were talking about this talent show, and it sounds like, especially you brought it up, it's like, the pandemic has been this wild thing where all the things that, I mean, more or less all the things that it sounds like you've been preparing to handle your entire life have come to a head, from stress to grief to trauma to stress and suicide and overdoses and like all these things. Like that was it was this powder keg, and you're doing this talent show that's aiming to bring your community together in it's Columbia, Missouri, right?
Mhm.
Like, tell me a little bit about like what first inspired that. How did this get going? And like, what's the where are we going with this thing? Like, how cool?
Okay. So, interesting story. So, what I found out is that the reward for good work is more work. So, when
That's,
I
there's no truer statement than that one. Yes, that was really good.
I have always been kind of like an oddball because I've moved all the time. I'm just different, right? And so one of the places where I flourished the most at was at the state hospital. I worked at the Fulton State Hospital, and somehow I ended up being on committees. I don't know how I ended up being on all these committees and just brainstorming ways to bring normalcy to our clients, right? So one of the things when you're looking, and this is like just, I can't, both of those, I'll go back to that. So when you look at mental health, right? So if I have a broken leg and I'm walking up the stairs with a handful of groceries, 9 times out of 10, somebody's going to come along and be like, oh, shoot, you got all this stuff. Let me help you with your groceries. You're hurt. When I'm sick on the inside, people don't respond as well. And so what I found in working in mental health is there are a lot of people that hadn't had that help or any experiences to help compensate for the help they didn't have. Right. So, like, I had people that never had danced with somebody else. I've had people that have never been on a date. Right. There's people who have been institutionalized for decades. Like, and for me, I think that was really mind opening and boggling to think, like, man, I could really be in an institution for years and just be in like a holding pattern. So if you look at criminal justice, if I commit a crime, I'm going to go to court, I'm going to get a sentence, I know how much time I do. If I'm sick and I commit a crime, I go to the hospital, I have to work a program in order to get out. There's no timeline, right? And if I'm really sick, me being in a hospital, I may not conform, which is going to extend my timeline. So some of my favorite people have been institutionalized for years. So back to the talent show. I was a substance abuse counselor. And so I would use like music for some of my people, right? So some of my old people I had doing the stanky leg one time when we were in group, right? And just to see people wake up and get bright. One of my clients told me, he said, I can't do the stanky leg. My hip is broke, but he's still trying to dance, right? So those moments of joy that you get within an institution that can be really, really rare and fleeting. So long story short, while I was within the state hospital, I had a chance to do 3 global celebrations where people could have experiences trying new foods, making dragons that went across the courtyard, right? And just to see that light, right? It wasn't anything to do with my traditional job, but that genuine intrinsic happiness, right? Just those things you can't do anything but smile about when you see them. And so I ended up doing like 2 talent shows. I think I did 2 talent shows where I was at the state hospital. And I had a lady that sung the Lord's Prayer in Bosnian, and you had people that can paint, and you had people that can play the drums, right? So you have all these things here. And the wealth, the happiness that came from that people were just happy. Like, it was in its purest form, no strings attached, just joy. Even though we were behind fences, even though we were behind locked doors, even though most of us wasn't going home, there was just a moment of peace and happiness. And so fast forward, I've been going there for about 8 years, maybe. We go through a pandemic, right? We're in a pandemic. Life changes all at once on top of the life that happened before the pandemic, right? So life was already happening and you had the pandemic. And what people sometimes don't realize is that when we went through that pandemic, our old society died, right? So when you're looking at grief and trauma and loss, you lost all those things that came, right? So we still don't know when we send our kids to school if they're safe. We still really don't know if the vaccinations are effective, right? Some people still aren't sure about shutdowns or if I'm going to have a job. And so you have all these things that we're still grieving on top of the physical loss. I can't remember the stat off the top of my head, but I was like maybe 20 million people, don't quote me, that was lost during that time. And so we have the loss of our society. We have the loss of old ways. When I was sharing, I lost my grandma. So one of the things that made that so hard is like, it was during she didn't die from Corona, but she died during that year. And because she was elderly, she didn't really want to get sick. And so the last pictures I have of my grandma were through a window, right? She didn't want to hug. So you had people that lost years of hugs and touches and visits, right? So you have all this complex, complicated grief and trauma. And we won't even add in the shootings, the overdoses, the domestic violence, right? And so I just want to be a part of the healing and not the hurt. And this is one thing that I can't do. I can't do everything, but it's just one thing I can help do. That's not a simple answer either.
Well, you know what I appreciate about that? Everybody wants a simple answer for everything, a short answer. Oh, just this. Well, when you're talking about all the layers that you just brought up, it takes time to unpack. You didn't even put in isolation. Like you talked about, you were watching people who were in isolation, literally behind bars and closed off. And think about a world not knowing how to deal with that all at once. And like, now I'm going to sit here alone in a room or quarantine this or whatever. Like, and now I'm going to just be confronted with all my shit. Like what? And all these
with
other
no support. And
with
everybody
no
else
support.
is dealing with their stuff.
And everybody else, and so many people just never were given the tools because of whatever reasons, because it's taboo. I guess to ask for help is just that. I mean, I know for me to just be vulnerable, I just literally did a podcast the other day about it. I'm like, I still struggle to this day, and I talk about feelings all the fucking time, all the time. My wife gets it. She calls me the chick of our relationship, and I'm fine with it. But like, that's me, and I'm in the field. Like I get it. Like I hold space, and it's crazy to think like there's so many people who just don't even know how to start.
Like you said, it's an onion. Where do you start?
I guess that, I mean, the only thing I've seen, and I'd love to hear I love what you're doing, the talent show. I think it's really cool. I love experiences because it's, especially we're talking about how you did it in the prison.
State hospital.
I apologize.
They wouldn't let me plant. I wanted to paint flowers in prison. They told me no.
Jesus. God forbid we make something desolate less desolate. I won't even go into like the thoughts around like, what is the purpose? Like to rehab or to like, I won't even go there because it just unwinds too much frustration. But
I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and so unfortunately for me, when you look at all those things, yeah, I've been just being infected by incarceration, right? And so I've had close people that's got life without possibility of parole. So like, there's so many things, like you said, so many layers. But I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. People don't consider the ripple effects of decisions. People think it's such, like we just talked about, a simple answer. No, it's not, because there's going to be a lot of second, third, fourth, 10th order consequences from one decision right now. And all I have seen is like, well, how about we just start by sitting down? The most simple answers, how about we just sit down and have a conversation about, well, what matters to you? And how do I support you in that? And then I'll share what matters to me. And then you can support, like, and it is an arduous, time-consuming process, but it's not an expense, it's an investment. People look at like, oh, but why am I going to do that? And I don't know how it's going to work out. It's like, you didn't know how shit was going to work out anyway. You didn't. Like we think we walk around like all this predictability, like we think it's predictable. Like everybody says the quintessential, you could walk outside your house right now and get hit by a car. Like we just flippantly say that, but it's for real. Like it's for real.
Rear-ended like 3 times in about 2 years.
Yeah. And it makes you go like, huh. I mean, to that effect, like this is a big thing with me. Like I have an ex-girlfriend who shared a loss of like a story about her. I won't go too far because it's her thing, but like an experience where she lost somebody and did not get to say something was the most haunting thing I've ever heard. I'm like, oh, this is a real thing. And if I was in the same position, whoa. And it made it for me, it made a point of don't harbor anger and judgment, and always tell people. Like my wife made a post on my Facebook wall the other day. It's like, do the weird thing and like make it a thing to like tell your friends you love them when you walk. Like I get out of the car, tell my friends, guys, girls, whomever, hey, just on chill, love you. I don't let my wife walk out the house. Hey, love you. Even if we're pissed off at each other, like, hey, by the way, let's square this one up, because you talked about something with your grandmother is the last thing. You don't know if the last time you hug them is going to be the last time you hug them. And then we just take that shit for granted. And it really
Most
bothers
definitely.
me. And I think we would grapple with all of this stuff so much more if we remembered that from a like fundamentally, man, this hug, this is nice. Whoa.
I've assigned a couple of my clients to do the 4-minute hug. And when I
4 minute
realized that
hug. Oh, you got to tell
the
me
four
about
minute
this.
hug. So if you Google 4-minute hug, I can't remember who did it, but it's on YouTube. They'll have couples, friends, parents, child hug for 4 minutes. And at first you hear people talking like, oh, like kind of 4 minutes, that's a long time. However, I almost cry every time I show those videos because what you see happen is the intrinsic payout. They kind of meld into each other and they start whispering the thanks and the appreciation due to the 4-minute hug. And it goes really quick. And so, absolutely, a lot of people, again, don't have those basic needs that are met, need to be met.
It shows how simple how powerful something so seemingly minute can be.
Yeah.
I'm going to share this with you. I heard this is one of the most powerful lessons my father ever taught me. We actually went on a 2-week vacation back in April to national parks. We're opening up about some stuff. I mean, this is one of those trips, like nothing was left unsaid, but one of the things he said was surface can be deep.
Mm.
And it took me a bit to unpack that one. But it was a lot of like, well, just sending a message or hitting the like button on somebody, like what, like little things of like, hey, I see you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm holding you. I'm here with you. You don't need to give, and I can be long-winded, so I understand the irony in all of this. Like I'm working on it. I really am. But it could just be that, but it could be everything at the same time. And especially when we do it in abundance.
Mm-hmm.
You tell somebody you love them every day, eventually, like on your good days and your bad days, eventually they're like, I guess they really love me. That was pretty reliable. I know somebody loves me.
Well, just like when you look at a kid, you can tell the kids that are confident and secure and the kind of attention they get at home versus the kids who don't get those I love you and give me a hug, right? It starts young. And so when you look at again that healing in those attachments, we have, like you said, so much stuff to unpack because it's based off of those home environments. And what I've realized is that a lot of our parents struggled. Right? You
Go
grow up and you're
figure.
like, oh wow, you know, maybe they weren't doing the best, even though they kept the bills paid and they gave us food. What if you're not getting a hug? What if you don't get a I love you before bedtime? What if it's just come in, do your homework, and sit down? Our parents did the best job with the information they had to. However, some of the tools that we needed for an adult to be needed when we became adults, we were lacking in because they weren't able to address them parts of themselves.
Well, that's why I think your work you're doing with couples is so powerful, because I feel like those, I mean, it's not, I feel like they're your first teachers.
Mhm.
Like they're our first God figures. They can do no wrong until that one day when we have that piss and vinegar as a teenager and we're like, mom and dad are wrong. Like they were wrong about that thing. And now everything they say is wrong and whatever. And I'm
Mhm.
going to rebel against all of it. But I'm curious about what got you to that. Was it some of online of this of like, hey, but if we empower them with these tools and it comes full circle?
Um, Becoming a parent and
Mm.
then researching history, right? So when we look at trauma and healing, and I've been doing some of the post-incarceration work that I was telling you about, being someone who's been affected by incarceration and recognizing how that changes behaviors and outcomes, right? So one of my fathers worked in DLC for 30 years. And I just recognized, well, I just didn't recognize, but like when I leave my office, it's almost impossible for me to walk past my office door and not check it 2 or 3 times. It's just impossible.
Really? Do
Right?
tell.
But I've been a prison baby, right? So the
Wow.
behaviors and the attitudes that he carried from being in, he worked in the Missouri State Penitentiary, one of the bloodiest penitentiaries on this side of the Mississippi River, right? He was super cautious with us. And he told us, to be hyper vigilant and be aware of your surroundings. And if you leave your door unlocked, you might get killed, right? So again, like a small tidbit of our parents do the best job with the information that they have. So yes, keep us protected, but don't make me fearful.
Wow.
Right? There's a thin balance. Um, Looking into just other families that I've worked with, and then even my own family, recognizing that my great grandmother struggled with alcoholism and domestic violence. However, there were no laws. So I had found out when I was mid 20s or so, she had actually went to prison for killing her partner. But because of no laws being in place, she went in for overkill, right? That ended up that resulted in my grandmother ending up in foster care. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about her after I learned about the system and like how horrible that would be, right? So grandma being in foster care, she was an artist, and going back and looking at all her work, one of the pictures that she had painted, it was a little girl standing in front of a Christmas tree with an orange, and the other kids are in the back opening presents. And my auntie asked her one year, it's just like, light bulb moments. She said, Mama, is that you? And my grandma never said a word. But that was so eye-opening on how much stuff she was never able to verbalize about the experiences she had with people who were supposed to take care of her, right? And so therefore, how do you raise a family based off of those experiences? She did the
Wow.
best she could.
With the
So,
tools they have, man. That's heavy.
so it is. It's a lot of stuff. And so for me, being able to just one of my coping skills is doing something positive, something productive, because time wasted is time gone. You don't get it back. And when my grandmother left here, the day before she passed away, I got pulled over in front of her house. And I had seen her come outside her house. I took her coffee every morning. It was one of the ways I checked in on her, make sure she picked the coffee up. But I seen her come out. And so I hit a right, hit another right, hit another right. When I pulled up in front of my grandma's house, the police was behind me. And I'm like, what? And my grandma was getting in her car. She comes over and she says, why are you messing with her? She doesn't bother anybody, this and that and the other. She was on her way to the store. She passed away the next day, but I can still in my head see, because she said she had just got done working on some of her work and she was going to go get some medicine. I can still see her with a cigarette in her hand, paintbrush in the other hand, putting those last strokes on a painting to get the work done before she left here. So who am I to waste time?
Makes you appreciate the little things a little more. I appreciate you sharing that story. Clearly, there's a lot there. It just brings me back to more like what you're doing and helping like these relationships. And I just see like the power of like helping parents like deal just like with just my wife and I are looking to have kids in the next year or so. And like, shit, I think about it every day. Like, well, what does this mean to be a father? What does it mean to be prepared? What does it mean to be like to set the tone? Because of all the things that you're actually talking about, is like there's a lot of things that are going to come up and there's a lot of stress. And how present am I going to be? And how can I communicate this? That's why I think what you're doing is so deeply important. I see it with my wife. My wife is a fifth grade teacher. I was telling you, she's in a city school, and bless her heart, she's got this gift. I mean, she can just grab a kid by the heart. She can just do that. You talk about again the energy, the gift. And she's like, I love the hardest cases, and she melts them every time. They can't win. They're like, because all they really want is like, shit, somebody loved me today and paid attention. It's like, you don't like the 2+2 they're trying to learn right now doesn't fucking matter. This kid
Most
they haven't been getting a hug. They've been told they were loved. Like, and now they're dealing with, I gotta wear the mask, I gotta do this. And I don't know how to grapple with, and how would they know? Especially if maybe
Mom and dad doesn't know.
mom and dad doesn't know, maybe one of them's an addict, one of there's financial instability, there's like throw a handful of darts at the wall, hit something that's going to be an issue.
Mom or dad is suffering with mental illness, right?
Yeah. And they don't know where to go. They don't know how to. And then it's going to just get handed down because all we're modeling is the other thing. So like, again, I think what you're doing is so deeply impactful. I don't even know where my thoughts go right now. I'm hitting so much with you right now. Like,
and I just want to say, choosing to be a father, choosing to be parents, you're 1,000 miles ahead of the game, because most of us just fell in a pothole and became parents. Right? So you're 1,000 miles ahead of the game. Not saying it doesn't work out, but that being intentional, purposeful gives you a little bit of a head start. And a lot of us just fall into it.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Again, in life throws us things we never anticipate, of course. But that's something I've been thinking a lot about right now. I actually had this, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts.
Okay.
I had this thought about, I feel like a lot of people are having kids more for just them and not thinking about the kid. Like, I think of a lot of things in the framework of business. I think of relationships in a business, because then what I've found is it has forced me in many ways to have to be very clear and concise. There has to be boundaries and rules and things like, and again, I like frameworks. I also don't like to feel caged in. Go figure. Go figure. But as we're talking about this filling voids, I feel like so many people, as part of like check their box on the American dream. Like, I got the big house and the white picket fence and the American flag, and like I got the 2.5 kids in the car. Like, I'm just trying to check the box and get through my life and like do all that stuff. But like, what about the kid? What, like, was it about the kid? And you see it. Obviously, I'm talking about, again, first world problems here, but like, you're trying to live vicariously through your child. Like, how they did in their sports is all a big reflection on you. Or as opposed to like, the sport we're bringing you to is so you can learn some life lessons. I don't give a shit if you won the game or not. And the more, ironically, of course, the way people, what I've found is when people do it the other way, those kids used to be the best at their given craft because they love it. They're passionate. And then you can have an open conversation. I don't know where that thought dawned upon me the other day, but like, it just was like, oh, why am I bringing life into this world? Why, what is the purpose of me doing this exercise? Is it just for me to feel good about, like, I'm a dad and I added that stamp onto my like life's checklist? Or what is my role in bringing life? How am I showing up? How am I going to think about not just them, but the generation after that? I don't know if you see that a lot, or if it's just like some people like react to later on, like, or people just fall into figuring that out later on. Like, how have you seen that play out?
Again, that's a good question, and no easy one answer, right? Because you being purposeful and intentional, you have to ask yourself that question, right? Just as anybody else who chooses to have kids. On the other side of things, I've seen a lot of my younger counterparts, because we're getting on up there. I got you by a little bit, Mr. Caleb. But a lot of my younger counterparts, they're
choosing. I wouldn't
say
that. You look like you're a day over 30, maybe 31, girl.
But because of the state of the world and where everything is at, some of our younger people don't want to have kids. I've heard that being more common. It all goes back to that self-evaluation. When I do my domestic violence class, I use the Duluth model. And what I found is the Duluth model works for most things. Is what actions am I taking? What's the intent behind that action? What's the belief that goes with that action? And then what are the effects from that action? Right? And so if my action is to have a kid, is my intent to bring life? Is my intent to have an athlete? Is my intent to have somebody to love? And then what's the belief that goes with that? Well, I believe if I have a kid that I'm going to be a better person. Maybe. Well, I believe if I have a kid that I'll heal. Maybe. Right? I believe if I have a kid, they'll listen to me. Probably false. right? It'll be the one person that listens to me. Probably not going to happen. Sorry, hope I didn't kill your dreams because that would look like it
No,
hurt.
no.
However,
I love it. I think that's been one of my greatest life lessons in learning to hold space and not have to be right.
right. But then what are the effects from those decisions, right? So if my intent is just to have a person that's going to do everything I want them to do, probably not going to have good effects because that kid's going to rebel against me, right? Same thing when we're looking at taking care of my mental health. I say I want to be happy. What actions am I willing to put in place to be happy? Well, if I'm smoking and drinking, I might be happy in the moment. That's my intent, is to be happy. My belief is that these alcohol and drugs are going to make me happy, but the effects are, oh, I might get a DWI. Oh, I didn't gamble away all my money. Oh, I woke up with bruises all over my body, right? So again, I don't know how many times I'm going to say that. There's no simple answer. In actuality, what I tell my clients is that I'm not here to give you answers. And if I ever tell you what to do, you should fire me. Any good therapist should never tell you what to do. If I ever tell you what you should do, you should fire me.
I love that. I love that because I think it's far more empowering to let somebody answer it themselves. It's the, I guess, dare I say, choice, as we talked about before. Crazy.
Yeah.
Like I have a choice in the matter.
Yes.
Now we can present options, I think, sometimes, like, because sometimes we're just like, I don't know, I have no
Oh
clue where
yeah.
to start. Like, it's very different when somebody gets the opportunity to opt in and say, like, yeah, I see, I understand the risks and the consequences and the upside, the downside, the trade-offs. I'm aware,
hmm
and I'm choosing that. And
I'm making an informed decision, right? And so when you go back and you're looking at relationships, that's where some of the conflict and the chaos comes in, is because people don't have the right information to make good decisions. Because if I know that you're really not a good guy, then I can choose whether or not I interact with you, right? Unfortunately, a lot of people aren't being forthcoming with who they are and what they want, their intents. And that's where the chaos begins in your relationships.
well, I see also like it's a two-way street too, because sometimes people don't even know what questions to be asking to find out if they're good or bad, whatever that means, like the right fit. It's pretty obvious later on. It's like, hey, I just got punched in the face every day. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's not the right fit. Though, we see a lot of people stay in abusive relationships for a litany of different reasons. But
Mm-hmm.
I think what we're bringing to the table here, and I love that you said it this way, it's like, I'm not giving answers, but I'm saying, here's some questions. How about you try these on?
Mm-hmm.
What answers did you get from that? And I see just asking a question is incredibly confident. Like, I'm okay with not knowing the answer. It's all good. And you do what you do with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would even go so far as to say, like, even counseling or like those type of things, it's like, hey, you heard these questions I asked, keep asking them of yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
why not ask them of others? If you're curious about building an intimate or a platonic or any type of relationship with, I mean, I see it in business all the time. I don't think it's any
Mm-hmm.
difference. Like, how do you just show up as you? What does it mean to be you? So many people are like, this is personal, professional. Like, aren't you the same person? I don't, or maybe you're not. I don't know. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you get into much with that with people? Like, I don't see know how much you see like the work into like that level. Like, I know you've worked with a lot of trauma, and you did say you like have some more like also the happy relationships too. Like, you deal with some of that stuff, like the brighter side.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you seeing any of that kind of stuff?
Can you rephrase the question for me? Because you gave me a lot of information.
I know, I apologize. I get like caught on one thought, like, wait, this question and this question, like 9 questions on top of it. So it was really, and I see I already lost my train of thought with it, but it was really around people knowing what questions to ask and modeling that. Like, how do
Okay.
we find our way there?
So do you mean like in navigating just relationships, or navigating life, or the relationship with myself, right?
I see them as the same thing.
Kind of hard to separate. I mean, I'm a firm believer in knowledge is power. I'm a lifelong learner. If you haven't figured that part out. And I
Not at
just think
all.
that
Didn't come through at all. Not even a little bit.
information is key, right? So I don't even know what to ask if I don't know what I don't know. So it kind of goes back into those experiences and being willing to do the researches and do the research and having those conversations, right? Because it's mind boggling when you ask somebody, well, what boundaries do you have in your relationship? Well, what are things you do that make you happy? Can you do more of those? And with women, especially my women, what things make you happy outside of being a mom and a wife?
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then if I don't know, where can we find information? Where can you get good information to be able to surf through it and see what's for you? Does that mean I give people the assignment to look up healthy relationships? Look up what is a healthy relationship. Go read some Gottman, the 7 principles of making marriage work. Have you reviewed the power and control wheel, right? Especially for some of our younger counterparts where they're going in. This is information we should be giving our kids like when they're 12 or 13 before they start engaging in relationships, right? So what does a healthy relationship look like? How do you know if your boundaries are being pushed? When you get that icky feeling, what choices do you have in saying no, right? I think one of the most disturbing things for me since I've entered doing more counseling is the number of women that have been sexually assaulted, and then they have to rectify that with themselves. Well, I was kind of drunk, or I really didn't say no. If a person asks you more than 3 times if you want to have sex, after that, it's probably kind of coercion. I probably didn't really agree. Right. Just side note, there's a TV video that comes out of London about consent. I show that to my clients a lot. Right. So that people, let me back up because that makes me mad. Right. Because you have all these people that's been hurt and they don't even know where to go get help. And then on top of, if I do try to get help, a lot of times they're re-victimized by the same systems that are supposed to help them. That's a whole nother talk. So information, having the conversations, being able to apply the information are ways just to start being able to identify those boundaries in order to have healthy relationships. Not an easy answer, huh?
No. Well, boundaries is always a hard conversation. And as you learn more about yourself, you might have more boundaries. Like it's, I think a lot of people think like, I'm going to get there.
It's a process.
But even like, it's not even a get there. It's cool. I'm here now. And I might be somewhere different tomorrow and I'll see what happens. And learning how to just be okay with that. I'll say firsthand, I struggle with that quite often. Like it's not a like I'm not immune to it either. It's asking the same question over and over again, but you're a different person each time, and how you interpret that is gonna be different.
Well, and it's going to change as you change, right? And that's like when you're looking at relationships, the important thing about getting to know and continuing to get to know your partner. I'm not the same 21-year-old that I was when I first started dating my husband. He might tell you I've been 3 or 4 people since we've been together. Right? And so again, it's a process. There's really no end until the end is what I found out.
We even brought up like with moms too, like what do you enjoy outside of being a mom or a mother or a mom or a wife? It's like, because I've talked with so many women like mom guilt, like to the idea of like I'm allowed to like have a me day or any of that, like just me time, or even couples just saying like, hey, we're going to prioritize our relationship and go on a date night once a week. It's the amount of times like this is one of those instances where like the answer is quite simple, but and usually like the beautiful answer is actually simple and it's eloquent in itself, but it's more, oh, like just keep checking in with each other, and it's okay to just do those things and make it the priority, because until you make it the priority, nobody else is going to, like your job or whomever, all those other places, they're going to come ask you, and they're all going to like, there's all people are
want your time.
They all want your time. They all want your time. And so many people just don't ask themselves, like, what do I actually care about? And which, like, there's the boundary. I don't care enough about that. Cool. Like, sorry, you stop here.
Yeah. When I understood, I can remember almost when I just said no. The ability to say no without explanation is mind blowing. And it's a really difficult skill because people look at you like, are you going to say anything else? No. Do you want to? No. Right? A lot of people don't have that ability. It goes with balance. Time. again, is one of the most valuable resources we have. One of the most valuable resources we have, and one of the only ones that's consistent at leaving us.
Ooh. Ooh. I've never heard somebody add that little nuance to it. The most I mean, it's always leaving us. It's just not renewing, as far as I know.
Please let me wake up in the morning. I'm not done yet. Right?
Wow. And it's the most consistent at leaving us. You've given me like 3 little brain teasers for me to just like chew on for the next week. You really have.
Okay.
You really have. I love that. This is just so you know, selfishly, I do this podcast. Another
Mhm.
reason why, when we talked a little bit like what inspired me to do it, like selfishly, I just get to talk to smart people. That's it. Like I just sit here and listen, and it's cool. And like, there, tell me your story. Like, cool. Like it's again coming back to simple. I won't call it like it's surface in that, hey, we're just having a conversation, but it's deep in like what happens in the conversation, and it's what I take from it. And hopefully you take something valuable from this time, or just nothing more than like, hey, now you have a new friend somewhere else
Thank
in the
you for
United
sharing.
States.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing your experience with me when we first got on, because you are another example of what resiliency looks like, right?
Thank
So
you.
some of these questions that you're asking me, you already have the answer. You may not have identified the answers, but you have it all within you, because you were able to make a culture shift. The thing that you were able to do, a lot of people never achieve.
I appreciate you saying that. Makes me feel good about myself.
Well,
Thank
you
you.
should feel good about yourself.
Getting me all blushing today. Complimented my hair. Oh my God. I compliment. Oh man. I am blushing. It's not just the fake and bake.
A true story. Think about that, right?
Yeah. Well, I love how you just put a lot of these things, like as you bring like shame and guilt to the forefront. Like, what do we have to be ashamed of if it's just part of our story, especially if we learn something powerful from it? And then even something more so is like, if that's also what allows you to serve and help others for the future, do we need to regret it? Do we need to hate it? Do we need to resent it? Like,
But who guides us in re who guides us in helping to reshift our narrative on what that experience means?
that's a hard question to answer. I think I love how you said it's like, I just decided to become what I needed when I was younger. And I think we all kind of play that role, like in some way, shape, or form. We're always seeking that. And I mean, I could be way off base on that one, but you know, I probably am. Like, there's one thing I do know,
I'm smelling, I'm hearing.
the one thing I know is that I don't know that much in the grand scheme of things. That has been a very liberating thing to come to terms with. But Tosca, I really appreciate you. Like, one, just because you've trusted me to just host some space with you for a little bit, and for you to be like, I'm being intentional about getting out there. And I think you have a really beautiful message that you're putting out into the world. And
Thank you.
I know you all of what, an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a
Like
half, somewhere
literally.
there. Literally. You wrote some little blurb in some questionnaire we put out there, and I read that, and I was like, yep, I'll chat with her. That was it. I was attracted to it. I was like, and you far exceeded my expectations. Far
Thank
exceeded my, like, you just have such a loving, and I gotta say, congratulations on becoming a grandmother. You just were like beaming. That was the first thing out of your mouth. Like, I have this new, like, this is me. Like, it's so cute. And especially like, I've been putting myself around a lot of parents and grandparents, and now my dog, who's my fur baby right now, who I love his cute little self. Tyson, you want to come up? Because you're being a pain in my tushy right now. He's taught me patience. I'm about to do a blog series on lessons from my dog. And now he wants to go outside. One of them is patience for sure. Daddy's busy right now, sir. No, I'll get you a treat in a second. Okay. That's when you know I need you, Dad. Tyson, you're being rude, mister. Come here. Come here. Give me 2 seconds so I can give him a treat. I'm gonna bring him over.
No worries.
Come here. Oh. See, we're keeping it naked Sunday style, just raw, uncut, unfiltered.
Oh,
And you got the
he
little
looks like
munchkin.
my granny's puppy, but my
Oh,
granny's puppy was black.
no, your little
His name was
munchkins.
Maxwell.
Oh, Maxwell. My wife will die when she hears that a doggy's name was Maxwell. This is Tyson. He's every bit of cute as I could imagine, but
Yeah.
I don't even know where my thoughts were going, but as knowing that he's going to get a little too restless in a second, we'll start to close this thing up. Here's one of my only other very favorite question to ask, and you
Okay.
somewhat touched on it today,
Okay.
is Tasca, what is your purpose?
My purpose. Um, my purpose is to promote generational healing. There's a lot of people who have been hurt and are still hurting and don't know what to do with the hurt. And just to move forward and giving people skills, tools, and language so that they can even begin to form a goal on what it looks like on their path to wellness and health. I think that's as simple as I can put it.
We've been refining every 10 minutes. We gotten a little more refined, a little more refined.
I think that's as simple as I can put it. Small things often can make a big difference.
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy knowing there's somebody like you out there, and I feel so happy that the people that are in your tutelage and being supported by you have somebody like you in their life, because just knowing when you can feel safe enough to even explore. I think a lot of what comes down to the questions we're talking about, like they're kind of threatening, they're kind of scary, and it's a lot of unknown behind it. And your demeanor and the love you clearly have, it's very genuine. This is not manufactured. It's for somebody to be able to be willing to let their guard down and let you in enough to let them share and open up and explore those things, and maybe rewire the way they see them in these experiences, and feel healed.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, really beautiful. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I have to just give thanks to the people that allow me to help and that they trust me, because you hit the nail on the head. A lot of people have been hurt by so many different systems that it can be really difficult to trust. I had to learn not to I don't trust people when I go into business meetings. I'm like, I don't trust people. I got trust issues, right? However, I've run into people who have allowed me to learn how to trust. And again, being that person for others. And that's how we start to promote healing, just not on an individual basis, on a community basis, and then on a state basis, and then the world basis.
And it starts on that little first step, just at home with us.
Yeah. And thank you for doing what you're doing. And like you said, Naked Sunday, the work comes when people are allowed to be vulnerable. So they go hand in hand.
Really, it's true. It really is true. And that was one of my most profound realizations, just sitting butt ass naked on my couch on a Sunday. So like, Tosca, my dear, you have anything else you'd like to share before we go?
No, I think I've shared more with you than I've shared with a lot of people.
Well, I feel even more honored to know that you felt comfortable enough to share that with me. You don't know this yet, but if you've listened to when you ever listen to any other podcast, one of my strange addictions is tears. And it sounds creepy off the rip, but in my life, I really struggled to build deep, meaningful, and authentic relationships. I really struggled with that and learning how to communicate. And what I find is that tears, happy or sad, is to me the most honest expression of who you are, of how you feel. And so I really deeply value that. And I really appreciate you just feeling comfortable enough to just allow me that space to hear what you've got going on. And I really hope people there's tons of value in all of this. Just like for me, I know I took a lot of value just in our time together, but anybody who's listening, like, man, I there's so much beautiful. I hope that people just take hope away from all of this, because there's somebody like you with a lot of love to give. To that effect, if somebody's listening right now and they're like, Tyson, if somebody's like, hey, she's got what I need, she's somebody that I would trust to help me work through whatever it is I'm working through, whether it's my relationships, my grief, substance abuse, all that stuff, what would be some of the best ways to get in touch with you?
I can be found on Facebook, on the TMT Consulting page. I can also be contacted on Instagram, and I do believe that's Tolson. I'm not sure. I'm kind of older, some of those things, but it's under TMT Consulting as well. And then we do have a website that's just TMT Consulting. And all that contact information is up to date. Send an email, send a phone call, and we're here. That's what I want to do, is just to help promote healing. Health is wealth, and to leave the world. I want my grandbaby to have a world to play in. Shoot.
Yeah, that's a pretty damn good aspirational goal right there. I'm all on board
And
with that.
yeah.
I love it. Well, so everybody knows, if they're listening right now, all that information is gonna be in the show notes, as my dog is just being a little sassy boy. He's such a ham, and he knows he can't even get in trouble with me. But all
That's what
that,
it's like to have kids. Good job.
I'm preparing myself. It's just like, okay, I love you. I still love you. I still love you. Patience is a virtue, as they say.
Yes.
Tosca, you have truly a beautiful soul, and I'm so grateful for being able to just get to know you and have a new friend out there. And I look forward to just being able to continue to support you. And again, thank you so much for just being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. And if you need any resources, again, I am the resource queen, and or you need somebody to throw something off of, that's what I like to do.
Oh, well, especially since I love working with couples myself, we might be having quite a few more conversations. So
Are
you're
you Gottman
fantastic.
certified?
I am not. I am
Okay,
not.
so you got to look up John Gottman, the 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work. And I think he's also got a date book, but being aware of those four horsemen is critical to any relationship. John Gottman has been able to predict divorce or separation within 5 minutes of meeting a couple. It's a must in your resource
That
pack.
that's going on the list. That'll be the most immediate purchase as soon as we get off of this call.
Okay.
Appreciate
All right.
you.
I can go on all day about this, and I want you to be able to get your puppy. But yeah,
All good.
thank you. And again, just thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Again, show notes going to have all of Tosca's information. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, much love.